What's up? Making a quick video covering a couple of the key points that if you'd have been following me on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, this wouldn't actually be news for you, but a lot of people started asking questions lately, and so I'm making this video specifically to answer those questions. Okay, so before moving on, let's start with what is money. Specifically, what is money? Okay, money is not a product of the government. Money came from the bartering system when people used to trade goods for goods. Okay, so if you can imagine, like 3,000 years ago, if you wanted to save up something valuable so that way in your later years in life you could retire off trading those valuables for other things that you need, you would say, you know, buy up or trade up to having a whole bunch of goats, right? Like if you had 3,000 goats, you would probably be pretty set in your retirement. So let's say like you want some wine, right? But the guy who has wine doesn't want goats, he wants sheep. So now you have to go find somebody who has sheep and trade your goats for their sheep. And now you have all these sheep, now you need a sheep herder, right? And so how do you pay the sheep herder? Well, maybe he wants the wine. You have red wine, but he wants white wine. You see where I'm going with this? It's a really inefficient, ineffective way of trading. It's barter, okay? Money made trading easier. That's all it is, okay? You know, if you could imagine trying to like deposit a pig into an ATM, that's why we don't do that anymore, because money makes that easier. Money, the only thing it does is it measures value, the same way that rulers measure length and clocks measure time. Okay, it is a claim on products and services. So you think of it like the coat check system, right? You go into the restaurant, you give them your coat, they give you a check for your coat, right? Okay. Now, all this makes sense until we start talking about things like monetary policy, quantitative easing, foreign exchange rates. Then all of a sudden the eyes kind of gloss over and you know, get people zombified throwing $5 words at them. Okay, what all that means is that the Federal Reserve, specifically in America, screws with the value of money itself. They change the value of money. Okay, so like $2 back in 1960 could get you a whole lot more stuff than $2 can today. Why? Because they are messing with the value of money. It used to be fixed to gold. It's not anymore. Now the value of money is determined by the Federal Reserve and their monetary policies and the foreign exchange rate and all those other things. Okay? So, if you could imagine, like if we go back to the coat check theory of economics here, that would be like a restaurant producing more coat checks in order to stimulate more business, or like somebody making more rulers in order to stimulate the building of more buildings. You see what I'm saying? Like when you think of it like that, it's like nothing they do actually makes sense. That's because they don't know what money is. They think money is wealth. Money is not wealth. Money is the measurement of wealth. Okay? So what gives this value? What gives it value? The fact that you and I agree that it has value. Okay? When we determine that this is worth, throw out a number, 5 water bottles, I can always exchange this for 5 water bottles. And I can always exchange 5 water bottles for this. Okay? As soon as you don't agree on that as a appropriate exchange for the products, then it doesn't have value, and it's just that simple. Like I'm an electrician, okay, so for me a soldering iron, very important. Maybe it's not that important for you. So like if I had a soldering iron and I really wanted some water bottles and I'm like, hey, I've got the soldering iron, can I get some of your water bottles? You would look at that like, I don't need it. You can have like 1 water bottle if you want. That's all it's worth to me. Okay, and I would have to figure out if that's worth it to me or not at that time. But if you came to me, said, hey, I really want that soldering iron, I got these water bottles, what can you give me for those? I would look at that and say, I got to have at least 50 water bottles because this is very valuable to me. See how that works? That's the difference between bartering and money. Okay, and so how does the value of money change? Well, it goes down terribly and quickly when the government who controls the money, forces the banks to give out these wild, high-risk loans. This happened in the 1920s, is that the banks were being forced to just pump all kinds of money into the economy, and people were getting loans for basically the big things were starting farms and manufacturing. And that's why you had all the roaring 20s, is because everybody had money to make things. Now, what happened is when it came time to collect on their loans, most people couldn't pay them back because they sucked at farming and the manufactured items were not that awesome. Okay, so then when the banks stopped collecting money for all the loans they started putting out, they stopped putting out loans. Okay, and now businesses are going under because they can't get money from the banks to pay their employees, and the banks are still waiting for the people they gave money to pay them back, but they can't because they don't have jobs. You see where this is going, right? 1934 wasn't just a stock market crash of 1934, it was a lot of things. And yes, the stock market crash of 1929 is when it, but from 29 to 34 it went, okay, that's how that works. Okay, so now fast forward 2007, we had another market crash, but this time it was the housing market. Why? Because of Ninja loans. Ninja, N-I-N-J-A, loans that were given out to people who had no income, no job, or assets. Okay, so what does that mean? All these risky loans were put out to people who probably wouldn't pay them back, and they didn't. So what happened was a whole lot of foreclosures, and that created a spiral, and a whole lot of bad things happened after that. One of the things I want you to remember is that you did not hear about the 2007 crash until 2009, okay? That's how you know it's a real crash. Like, if you can remember back in 1999, everybody was up in arms about the century turning over. It was going to mess up all the computers. It was caused worldwide devastation. It was crap. And one of the ways you know it's crap is it was highly advertised and it was highly circulated because it was controversial and all this stuff, but it was all crap. It was all fluff. Same thing with the Mayan calendar. Same thing with any other end of the world thing, because if it really was the end of the world, you wouldn't know about it from the media. Now, if I wanted to buy a car, I would not go and get advice from a car salesman. Okay? Why? Well, let's think about this. If there's a person who's like a Chevy dealer, and I ask them, hey, what kind of car should I buy? What are they going to tell me? Buy a Chevy, right? Okay. Who would I ask? I would ask a mechanic. Hey, what kind of car do you drive? Right? Does that make sense? You got to watch who you get your advice from. Now, as far as where I get my information from, as far as the economy and everything else that we're talking about, Peter Schiff, okay, he's the CEO of a bank. Steve Forbes, you've heard of the Forbes 500 and other things like that. Robert Kiyosaki, he wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And Mike Maloney, who runs goldandsilver.com. He's a gold and silver investor. Okay? Let's start with Robert Kiyosaki. He wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Here's the thing you got to understand about this guy. This guy makes money by getting other people to be rich. He literally based his whole business on teaching other people how to invest in real estate, invest in stock markets, invest in businesses, and things like that. So he is rich by getting other people rich. Okay, if he sucked at his job, like other people wouldn't be rich, he would not stay in business. Okay, he is successful because he teaches people how to be successful. That's how successful is. He is the mechanics of money. Understand that? Okay, he wrote a book back in 2002 called Rich Dad Prophecy: Why the Biggest Stock Market Crash in History is Still Coming and How You Can Prepare for It. Okay, now there's a YouTube video out there. I'll put the link down below. He says back in 2011, okay, that the 2007-2009 financial crisis was not that bad, and that the biggest next Great Depression will begin in 2016. Yeah. Okay? So take that for what it's worth. Okay, so this is Mike Maloney's YouTube channel. Sorry, I'm yelling. And this is a quick, I'm only going to watch 1 minute out of this 13-minute video with you here, where he actually goes over another video he made. See, this is a YouTube video about a YouTube video. He's going over things that he talked about in a 30-minute video, the top 4 reasons for deflation, hidden secrets of money, number 6. So there's 5 more of these 30-minute videos. Yes, I've watched them. They're all great. This is the point I want you to see.
Everybody should know about the maximum spending demographic, about the wealth distribution cycle. Now, these are important things. This is a graph of the result of the demographics of the population in the United States. And then there's the stock market cycle. And after that, we've got the Kondratiev wave.
Kondratiev wave
was a Russian economist that, well, you'll find out a lot more about it if you watch the video. And also the east-west cycle. And here I add a lot of them up. I show you the Kondratiev wave, the east-west cycle. This is the household debt as a percentage of disposable income cycle. And you really need to see these. And then there's the cycle of the different monetary systems that we have. Every 30 to 40 years, the world has a new monetary system. But when you add all of these different cycles together, they're all pointing toward deflation right now. And I do believe it will be short-lived because, like I say at the end of this video, deflation is every central banker's worst nightmare. And they will print and print and print until they print their way out of this deflation. But
okay, you see all them arrows, right? So this is the 12-minute mark of how negative interest rates and deflation will bankrupt the world by Mike Maloney, Gold and Silver. Now, this is an article I printed out a long time ago. Sell everything ahead of stock market crash, says Royal Bank of Scotland economist. Okay? And the whole article basically echoes everything that I'm telling you right now, is that this is the last year of America as we know it. Now, I'm not saying that I know what it's going to turn into, but this is what I am saying. When Rome fell, it didn't disappear off the map. It went from this big to one little country. Same thing with Greece under Alexander the Great. It used to be huge and then went back to the little country that it is. Great Britain used to have so many territories that the sun never actually sat on Great Britain because they owned so many different colonies at one time that the sun would always be shining on some sort of land that Great Britain owned, and they were shrunk back down to the one little island country that they are. So, when we look at America, we look at their monetary policies, we see what this is doing. America is going to, and what's going to be left in its place? Probably going to be something really similar to when Russia collapsed, or I should say when the USSR collapsed. Okay. Alright, so you probably ask yourself, oh man, what do I do about this? Well, there's 3 major things that you need to survive any catastrophe. Beans, bullets, and band-aids. Okay, now how often do you actually need band-aids? Yeah, it kind of depends, different for each person, right? Depending on how accident prone you are. So, maybe, right? How often do you need bullets? Right now we don't need them at all. Well, what if it's like Katrina bad? Yeah, again, maybe, maybe not. How often do you need to eat? Every day. Okay, we found priority number 1, didn't we? Alright. So, what you can do, you go to Lowe's. Again, I don't recommend people do things that I'm not doing myself. So, go to Lowe's, get you a 5-gallon bucket for $3. And get a lid for $1.50 more. Not even at $5 yet. Then you go to Walmart, usually right down the road from Lowe's. You get a 10-pound bag of rice and a 20-pound bag of rice. Okay? 30 pounds of rice. Long grain white rice. It will last 10 years if you never open it. But you're going to open it. And it will give you calories. Now you need more than just calories to be fully nourished. Okay? But you can get this rice at a price of $1 per 2 pounds. Okay? So 30 pounds of rice, $15. $5 bucket with lid. We're at $20. You got a whole lot of calories taken care of. Okay? Need to get enough for winter. Put it that way. And winter in Ohio is like 6 months, so a lot. Okay? When you go to put the rice in the bucket, don't just stuff it one on top. Don't just throw one in there and then try to slide the next one down. You'll be frustrated with it. Lay it on its side, so that way all the rice gets leveled out. And then take your smaller bag and stuff it inside of that. And it fits right in there. Okay, you're going to want to get a pen and paper to write down some notes. So go ahead and pause the video and do that. Okay. The 4 survival principles, okay, to survive. The most important thing you need is shelter, then water, then food, and then fire. Okay? Your shelter is the most important thing. Okay? You carry your shelter with you everywhere you go to protect you from the elements. Your clothes are part of your shelter. Without shelter, you could die in less than an hour. Hypothermia will kill you quickly, especially in the wintertime. And even in the summertime, heat exhaustion will kill you if you don't get to some cool shelter from the sun and the elements. Okay, so shelter is number 1. So with shelter is, well, where is it? I highly recommend not being anywhere near highly populated areas, because highly populated areas are full of highly stupid, evil people. Okay, I don't want you to have to fight every day. But if you're going to stand and fight, understand that's your plan. And so that bullets might be a bigger priority than food. So, going back to what I was saying, you get your shelter taken care of at a location that's reasonable to not have to fight every day. You've got your food stores. You hopefully get some water stores. Okay? Now, if you want specifics like how much protein should I pack away, how much carbs should I pack away, and things like that, I'm not going to get into all that with the video. That right there is the first thing you need to do if you haven't done it already. And I would suggest you do as much of it as you can. I have at least 10 buckets of rice full of 30 pounds of rice. Okay? Because it's not that expensive, and I do it every time I go to the grocery store. Okay? So yeah, this is more important than spending money on your next margarita. Okay? Because you are going to want to keep your kids and yourself fed and warm and dry this winter, and it's going to be really hard when all of a sudden nobody can use their money for anything because of the economic collapse, the next Great Depression. Because banks are not going to give out money, so companies are going to close down because they can't pay their employees. Understand? All right. Shelter, food, water, and then fire, because you need to be able to cook your food for the most part, and it'll keep you warm somewhat. Don't rely on fire to keep you warm, because that's just silly. All right. Don't romanticize survival. Everybody wants to talk about bugging out and grabbing a 3-day pack and hauling off into the woods and doing all this stuff, and it's all fantasy, okay? Roughing it is not fun. It might be fun in a bourgeois lifestyle where we can come back to our air-conditioning house after a weekend of roughing it, but living in a roughing it world sucks. There's a reason people don't do it. Alright, so the last thing that I want to talk about, and I know I've taken up a lot of your time, and I'm sorry, but this is probably the biggest evidence that we are going to collapse as an economy and as a country, okay? Here's a graph that I printed off in 2015, okay? The top graph here which only goes to 2012, is the U.S. national debt as a percentage of GDP. GDP is gross domestic product. That's all the wealth that we create in this country, okay? So all the collected total worth of all the businesses compared to the national debt, just the national debt of the United States government. And in 2012, here's 100%. We were above that. In 2012, we were at 103%. I think we're actually closer to 110 now. What does that mean? That means every year our government is going further in debt than if every corporation sold off every asset it had, it still couldn't pay off just the debt. That does not include things like unfunded liabilities, which are things like Social Security and Medicare. Those are things that the government knows they're going to have to pay back in the future, but they don't have a real number assigned to it now. It's not like a debt where you take out a loan, it's a number and you got to pay that back. An unfunded liability is we know we owe that, but we don't have to come up with the money for it right now, so we're not going to count it. You see that? So don't depend on Social Security, don't depend on Medicare and Medicaid, don't depend on the government to give you money because they ain't got none. All right? And to further prove the point, this is a graph. This is measured in trillions of dollars. And this is the U.S. national debt. See what's going on here? Now again, this graph was created in 2012. I filled in these lines up to 2014. And in 2014, we were at $17 trillion. But as I'm making this video right now, the U.S. national debt is actually over 19 trillion dollars. That is an unfathomable number, okay? This is not something that Congress has dealt with before, okay? You see these numbers? This is new. This is not something we've ever faced with before. And in 2007, the first time the economy had a hiccup, they introduced something called quantitative easing. That's part of why these numbers are so high. Now we're about to go through 2007 again this year in about 30 days, and we are already beyond a debt that we can pay back. You see why this is such a problem. The banks are going to shut down, businesses are going to shut down, and our government is going to have to reform. They're kind of doing the same thing over in Britain right now. I hope this video was useful. I hope it motivates you to do something to get ready for this. You know, if it doesn't, we'll still hang out, still be friends, all that stuff. It's no big deal. But this is something that I have been specifically putting effort towards for the last 5 years. That's why I'm so far along. You know, most of these videos that these guys put out, Robert Kiyosaki and them, you know, they're like 45 minutes long with research after data after information, and it's all good information, research, and data. I'm just not trying to take up all your time right now with all of that. So, let me know what you think, and I'll catch you on the flip side.